you said he was shot and is he breathing?
No, I don't think so.
Alright, when did this happen?
Like 5 minutes ago?
Alright. And how many is injured? Is it just him?
Yes, it's just him.
Alright, and how many suspects were involved?
I don't know, sir. I was there with my bed and I just heard gunshots. I
Alright.
put him under the bed.
Where's that suspect at now? Do you know?
No, sir.
What would you do if the person closest to you, the one you loved, trusted, and built a life with, became your worst enemy? What if, in the dead of night, the one person you thought would protect you instead plotted your death? This is the haunting story of Quinton Lee Gray, a man who rose from humble beginnings to chase his dreams as a rapper, all while being a devoted father to 2 young sons. Known to his fans as Hood Rich Montana, Quinton seemed to have it all: ambition, talent, and the love of a woman he thought he could trust. But just hours before his life was stolen, Quinton had no idea that the woman he'd built a life with, Nyasia Perkins, was orchestrating a deadly betrayal. It was the night of December 8, 2024, when Quinton was shot multiple times in the living room of their home. The 911 call Nyasia made was filled with frantic desperation, her voice trembling as she told dispatchers her boyfriend had been shot. But as authorities arrived on the scene, the story began to fall apart. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No struggle. Just Quinton's lifeless body, and his 2 young children, left alone in the chaos. At first it seemed like a robbery gone wrong, a random act of violence. But something didn't sit right with the investigators. Nyasia's story kept changing, and the evidence pointed to something far more sinister than a home invasion. A pattern began to emerge. A chilling conspiracy involving not just Nyasia but someone else. A man who was no stranger to violence. This is a case of betrayal so deep, it will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and love. But the truth behind Quinton's murder? It's darker and far more calculated than anyone ever imagined. And what the investigators uncovered next will change everything. This story isn't just about a crime, it's about betrayal, trust, and the consequences of hidden motives. Quinton Lee Gray's murder is a stark reminder that sometimes, the people we trust the most can be the ones who harm us the most. But what really drove Nyasia Perkins to betray the man she once called her partner? We want to hear your thoughts. Was this a crime of passion or something much more calculated? Do you think there are still pieces of this story we haven't uncovered yet? We know many of you might have experienced betrayal or know someone who has. Your voices matter, and sharing your experiences can help shed light on the emotional toll such events take. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Tell us what you think happened, and if you've ever faced a situation that made you question the people closest to you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that will keep you thinking long after the video ends. Quinton Lee Gray, better known by his rap name, Hood Rich Montana, was a name that echoed through the streets of Kinston, North Carolina. A man with dreams too big for the small town he came from. Quinton wasn't just an artist, he was a father, a son, a man determined to carve out a better life, not just for himself, but for the 2 little boys who depended on him. Rising through the ranks of a tough industry, Quinton poured his soul into his music. His voice, raw and real, spoke of struggles and triumphs, his rise from the bottom and the unyielding fight to make it to the top.
Everybody around me keep leaving, play with my feelings and I don't give them a reason. They take my heart and they break it all into pieces. It seems like everybody around me keep leaving. Lost someone so close to me and lately ain't been feeling right. This ain't how it's supposed to be, I go to sleep with chills at night. Don't know where my soul will be if I don't ever heal it right. When you lose your soldier to that toaster, it's that feeling right. When I lost my partner, I was caught up in that whirlwind. Load up all them shots with my shot and we searching. We pulled on that.
His music was his escape, his way of telling the world that no matter where he came from, he could make it. But for Quinton, the stage wasn't just about fame, it was about securing a future for his sons, Gianni and Amiri. Every lyric he wrote, every late-night recording session, was driven by the love he had for his children. Gianni and Amiri were everything to him, his motivation, his reason for pushing through the toughest days. Quinton wasn't just building a music career, he was building a legacy for them, a legacy that would outlast the struggles and the hardships of his past. Through sleepless nights, through the grinding hustle, Quinton kept his focus on one goal, to give his boys a life he never had. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he was prepared to fight for it. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifices. But little did Quinton know, the life he was fighting for, the life he dreamed of for his children, was about to be stolen away by the very person he trusted the most. To the outside world, Nyasia Perkins and Quinton Lee Gray were the epitome of a perfect couple. Two souls bound together by love, their happiness on display for everyone to see. Social media posts flooded with photos of smiles, family gatherings, and words of devotion. Nyasia often shared her pride in Quinton's success, calling him her everything, while Quinton publicly declared his love for her and their two sons. 4 years they built a life together, a life full of shared dreams and ambitions. They were a family, seemingly inseparable. Quinton, the hard-working father striving to give his children a better future, and Nyasia, the woman who appeared to stand by his side every step of the way. But behind the perfectly posed pictures, beneath the constant declarations of love, things weren't as flawless as they seemed. The cracks were starting to show, small, unspoken tensions that neither of them truly addressed. In moments when no one was watching, there were signs of something much darker brewing. Nyasia was becoming increasingly distant, her patience wearing thin. Jealousy began to creep in, of Quinton's success, his time away from home, the energy he poured into his music. It wasn't just about the long hours or his dreams anymore. It was the distance between them, the slow erosion of trust, and the resentment that began to bubble beneath the surface. In the quiet moments, whispers of doubt grew louder. Unspoken frustration festered, and while Quinton focused on his career and his children, Nyasia's heart was becoming colder, filled with resentment. She wasn't just standing by his side, she was waiting for something more. But behind closed doors, Nyasia's intentions were far from loving. The jealousy, the anger, the growing need for control, it was all beginning to consume her. And what seemed like a happy relationship was starting to unravel, setting the stage for a betrayal no one could have ever predicted. What was really brewing beneath the surface? What dark intentions was Nyasia hiding, and how far would she go to see them fulfilled?
And you said he was shot, and is he breathing?
No, I don't think so.
Alright, when did this happen?
Like 5 minutes ago?
Alright. And how many is injured? Is it just him?
Yes, it's just him.
Alright, and how many suspects were involved?
I don't know, sir. I was there with my bed and I just heard gunshots. I put him under the bed.
Where's that suspect at now? Do you know?
No, sir.
As the first responders arrived at the scene, the tension was palpable. What was supposed to be a tragic home invasion, an innocent family caught in the middle of a robbery gone wrong, quickly began to unravel. Quinton Gray, the rising rapper known as Hoodrich Montana, lay motionless in the living room, shot multiple times. His body, positioned unnaturally, seemed almost staged, as if someone had carefully placed him there. His two young sons, terrified and confused, were found huddled in the corner of the room, their wide eyes the only sign of the terror they had just witnessed. There were no broken windows, no kicked-in doors. No signs of a struggle, no signs of anyone forcing their way inside. The front door was locked from the inside. The windows were intact. No signs of valuables being taken. Nothing to suggest the robbery Nyasia had described. As investigators began combing through the scene, a chilling realization set in. This was not a random act of violence. The details, the lack of chaos, and the unnatural positioning of Quinton's body painted a different picture. One of deliberate execution, not a hurried crime of passion. The murder weapon was missing, but there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints leading away from the house, no fleeing suspect. It was almost as if the killer had been invited in, or had never left. As the investigation progressed, everything pointed back to one key question. Who was the true mastermind behind this cold-blooded act? Was this truly a home invasion, or had Nyasia orchestrated the most shocking betrayal of all? The woman who had once stood beside Quinton, the mother of his children, the one who had cried for him in front of the world, could she have been the one to pull the strings? Was she the one who planned his brutal execution, in cold blood? The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the truth, dark and twisted, was only beginning to surface. Was this truly a home invasion, or had Nyasia orchestrated the most shocking betrayal of all? Keep watching to uncover the truth. As the investigation unfolded, investigators began to dig deeper into the details Nyasia had provided. Her story, initially filled with panic and fear, began to unravel. The inconsistencies started to surface, small details that didn't quite add up. What seemed like a desperate attempt to protect her children was beginning to look more like an elaborate lie. There was no sign of forced entry at the house. No broken windows, no kicked-in doors. nothing to suggest a home invasion. The front door was locked from the inside. The windows were untouched and the living room showed no signs of a struggle. Quinton's body was positioned too perfectly, too carefully. The blood around him had pooled, but nothing was disturbed. There were no signs of a fight. No overturned furniture. No scuffle. Just a lifeless body, placed in a way that seemed deliberate. Nyasia had claimed she was asleep in bed when the shots were fired. Yet, according to the timeline, there was something off. The phone records didn't match up. Nyasia's calls and messages were active well after the time she had claimed to be sleeping. Her social media activity, too, was strangely calm, almost too calm for someone who had just witnessed a brutal murder. Hours after Quinton's death, Nyasia made a series of posts on her social media account. She posted, "Really just numb, sick to the stomach, to it all. I see everyone's messages and calls. I appreciate all the words. Heartbroken that our boys don't know what's going on. All they know." She posted a picture of the two together with their son with a caption that read, "I can't stop looking at pictures of us." She posted another pic of him, captioned, "My favorite one." In another post, she posted a pic of Quinton and the two boys, captioned, "Never going to forget the things you taught me and the things you told me. Always watch the board." She also posted concerning Quinton funeral service saying, "Everybody that think they going to be at Hoodrich, Montana service, y'all not. He only F with a few and they know who they are. And the people he didn't EFF with, y'all know who y'all are. He already told me he don't want none of y'all fake mother effers in his stuff. Sorry but not sorry." She also posted, "It's about that time, bae. I'm glad I gave you your flowers while you was here. I love you. Thank you for everything. I'm going to try my best to be as strong as you. Me, Gianni, and Amir love you. I wish this never happened to you, Hoodrich, Montana. Burgundy for you. Hoodrich, Montana, watch over us, bae. We love you until we meet again." Her grief appeared to fade too quickly. Her posts, once filled with words of sorrow and loss, quickly turned to anger and exclusion. It was as though the public mourning was a performance, a mask hiding something much more sinister. The security footage from the neighborhood revealed even more troubling details. Nyasia's car was parked in front of the house that night, but no unfamiliar vehicles were seen leaving the scene. There were no suspects fleeing the house, no cars speeding away in the dead of night. It was as if the crime had been planned, controlled. The lack of urgency in the footage, the absence of any sign of panic, spoke volumes. As investigators dug deeper, one name kept coming up: Calvin Coley, Nyasia's co-worker. A man with a violent past, one that had been kept hidden from Quinton. Calvin had a history, charged with attempted murder just a few years earlier. But what was his connection to Quinton's death? What role had he played in this twisted scheme? Calvin and Nyasia had been in contact frequently before and after the murder. Text messages between them seemed to confirm what investigators were beginning to fear. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a conspiracy, cold, calculated, and premeditated. The pieces were falling into place, but the truth was far from clear. Calvin's name kept emerging in the investigation, and the deeper the authorities dug, the more connections between him and Nyasia came to light. Were they working together? Was this a crime orchestrated by the two of them, plotting, planning, and executing a murder to silence the very man who trusted them both? Or was Nyasia hiding something even darker, something more dangerous? Nyasia had played the part of a grieving girlfriend well, but now the facade was starting to crack. The inconsistencies in her story were too glaring to ignore. And as Calvin Coley's involvement became clearer, one question lingered in the air. What was the connection between Nyasia and Calvin? And why did Nyasia seem to be hiding more than just grief? What was the true extent of their betrayal? And what would it cost them when the truth finally came to light? Keep watching as the mystery unravels. Days had passed since Quinton Lee Gray's brutal murder, and the investigation was gaining momentum. Nyasia Perkins had played her role perfectly, grief-stricken, distraught, yet strangely calm in the days after her boyfriend's death. But her calm was about to be shattered in the most unexpected way. At her workplace, Nyasia was caught off guard. One moment, she was lost in her routine, her expression neutral, her actions methodical, and the next, she was facing the officers who had come to arrest her. There was no struggle, no protest. Just the quiet, cold realization that the facade of grief she had been wearing had finally been pierced. There was no outburst, no pleading. Nyasia simply sat there, her eyes locking with the officers as they read her the charges. First-degree murder. Felony conspiracy. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. It was almost as if she had been waiting for this moment, her calmness betraying nothing but the stillness of someone who had long since planned her next move. She didn't resist. She didn't cry out in panic. She didn't even seem surprised. Nyasia's arrest was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the explosive revelations that had led to this moment. Her lack of emotion, her stone-cold composure, sent a shiver down the spine of everyone watching. But Nyasia wasn't the only one who had a part to play in the deadly conspiracy. Calvin Coley, her co-worker, and a man with a violent history, was next. Calvin, unlike Nyasia, wasn't prepared for the officers to come for him. The moment he saw them, his eyes flickered with panic. He tried to evade capture, darting into the back of the building, hoping to hide behind stacks of inventory. But his escape was futile. The walls were closing in on him, and there was nowhere left to run. Like Nyasia, Calvin's arrest was quiet. No shouting, no resistance. The calmness of his demeanor as he was taken into custody was unsettling, almost as if he had accepted his fate the moment the investigation turned its gaze on him. The silence of their arrests was deafening. Two people, two suspects, whose involvement in Quinton's death seemed undeniable. But their lack of reaction, their cold demeanor, only deepened the mystery. Was this the guilt of two individuals caught in the act? Or was there something more, something darker, lurking beneath the surface of their stoic faces? Their arrests were the beginning of something much larger. As investigators dug deeper, the connections between Nyasia and Calvin grew more complex. There were whispers of something darker, of a conspiracy that stretched far beyond what anyone had expected. Two arrests, two suspects. But what other secrets were hiding just beneath the surface of this chilling conspiracy? And who else might be involved in the web of lies that led to Quinton's untimely death? The courtroom was charged with emotion. On one side, Quinton's family, their faces twisted in anguish, the weight of their loss still fresh, their hearts broken by the brutal murder of their loved one. His mother, sitting in the front row, eyes red and swollen from tears, glared at the two accused, Nyasia and Calvin, who stood calmly before the judge. The anger and pain in the room were palpable, a silent cry for justice. But while Quinton's family felt every ounce of the loss, Nyasia and Calvin stood there with cold indifference. Nyasia, the woman who had once claimed to love Quinton, appeared emotionless, her face a mask of detachment. Calvin, the man who had pulled the trigger, stood just as still, his eyes fixed forward, betraying nothing. The contrast between the grief in the room and their lack of reaction made the atmosphere even more unnerving. As the prosecution laid out its case, the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records revealed a pattern of communication between Nyasia and Calvin, texts and calls in the days leading up to Quinton's murder. Messages that hinted at a conspiracy, a shared plan, and a cold determination to see it through. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood confirmed their involvement. There were no signs of a random intruder, no signs of a chaotic home invasion. Everything pointed to a well-thought-out execution. Forensic analysis only solidified the prosecution's case. The blood splatter patterns, the positioning of Quinton's body, everything suggested a careful, methodical plan. This was no crime of passion. It was calculated, deliberate, and cold. The prosecution's case was airtight. Every detail, every piece of evidence, reinforced the guilt of both Nyasia and Calvin. Quinton's family sat in disbelief as the truth of his betrayal was laid bare. The woman who had once been his partner, the man who had once been his friend, had conspired together to take his life. The depth of the deception, the extent of the planning, was more than they could bear. As the prosecution continued, one question hung in the air. How could two people so close to Quinton betray him so completely? And with each new piece of evidence, it became clear that the truth was more twisted, more sinister than anyone had imagined. As the case unfolds, what other shocking details might emerge that could change the course of this case forever? What secrets are still lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Quinton Lee Gray's death left a void that could never be filled. His mother, overwhelmed by grief, was inconsolable, her heart shattered by the loss of her son. The pain of knowing that he was taken so violently, so unexpectedly, was unbearable. But for his two young sons, Gianni and Amiri, the devastation was something else entirely. They were left fatherless, trying to make sense of a world where their protector, their hero, was suddenly gone. How do you explain to a child that their father will never come home? How do you comfort them when the person responsible for their pain is the very one who was supposed to love him the most? Quinton's death echoed through the community. Friends, family, and neighbors all found themselves searching for answers. The man they knew, a loving father, a hard-working son, was gone, and the person responsible was someone they never expected. Nyasia, the mother of his children, the woman who had been by his side. The sense of betrayal was palpable. How could she, the one who should have protected him, be the one to end his life? For those who loved Quinton, the pain wasn't just from his death. It was the crushing reality that the person who had betrayed him was someone he had trusted with his heart. Nyasia had stood beside him in public, but behind closed doors she had pulled the strings of a plan that would forever alter their lives. As the truth about Quinton's death begins to surface, could there be more shocking revelations to come? What other secrets lie hidden beneath the surface of this tragic betrayal? Quinton Lee Gray's death wasn't just a loss for his family, it was a loss for the community, for the world of music, and for his 2 young sons, who will grow up never truly knowing the man who gave them everything. The betrayal came from the one person who was supposed to love him, the one person who shared his life, his dreams, and his future. His mother, who had raised him with love and hope, now faced the heartbreaking reality of losing her son to a senseless, brutal act. And for his sons, Gianni and Amiri, their father's absence would echo in their lives forever. They would never know the dreams he had for them, the life he had planned to give them. Quinton's legacy was more than just his music, it was the love he had for his children, the sacrifices he made to build a better life. He fought for his future, for the future of his family, and for the dreams that seemed just within reach. But that future was stolen away by the hands of those he trusted the most, and now his story would be forever marked by the cruelest of betrayals. But the truth behind Quinton's death isn't finished unfolding yet. As the investigation continues, new questions arise. Could there be more people involved in this cold-blooded plot? The web of lies and betrayal runs deeper than anyone could have imagined, and the investigation is far from over. As the truth continues to unravel, one thing is certain. This story is not over, and the darkest secrets may still be waiting to be exposed. If you found this story compelling, make sure to comment below with your thoughts. Who do you think was behind the darker parts of this conspiracy? Don't forget to like, share with others who need to hear this story, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping true crime tales. The search for justice continues, and we want you to be a part of it. Stay tuned, more shocking truths are yet to come.